Call me Sir Lachwolf, I was Stromlund.
I told you, sir, this dog does not have proper papers. You will have to leave it here for me to check.
Miss Coleman, he's a sir.
TSA Supervisor mocked veterans' PTSD service dog. Pentagon legal team shut down security. When Marine veteran Jake Thompson arrived at LAX with his PTSD service dog Ranger, TSA Supervisor Patricia Coleman saw only a fake support animal scam. Her decision to mock his condition would trigger a Pentagon legal response that shut down Terminal 4 within hours. Ranger wasn't just a dog, he was Jake's lifeline. Los Angeles International Airport's Terminal 4 thrummed with Monday morning chaos. Thousands of travelers navigated security checkpoints while TSA agents processed endless streams with mechanical efficiency. The terminal's high ceilings echoed with multilingual announcements. Jake Thompson stood quietly in the service animal line, Black Labrador Retriever Ranger at his side. At 34, he carried himself with controlled military bearing, though his hyper-vigilant eyes scanning the crowded terminal revealed invisible wounds that had ended his Marine career. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 dead Marines in his squad, 1 IED explosion that shattered more than his body. It had fractured his mind. The nightmares, panic attacks, and crippling anxiety in crowds had driven Jake to near suicide before the VA assigned him Ranger. Ranger was no pet. The 75-pound lab had cost $25,000 and required 2 years of specialized training. He detected Jake's panic attacks through scent, interrupted nightmares, created barriers in crowds, and performed deep pressure therapy during episodes. Professional service vest, comprehensive certifications, federal identification, everything legitimate. Jake was flying to his sister's wedding in Denver. Amy had asked him to walk her down the aisle after their father's death during Jake's deployment. First flight since medical retirement. Airport environments triggered every PTSD symptom he managed, but Ranger's presence kept him functional. His Pentagon disability advocate had insisted he understand his federal rights before traveling, a conversation that would prove prophetic. Jake carried comprehensive documentation, VA medical records, Ranger's ADI-accredited training certificates, federal service animal identification. He'd researched TSA procedures, called airlines twice, arrived early. Everything by the book. Patricia Coleman had different plans. Recent explosion of fraudulent emotional support animals had made her cynical about young veterans claiming PTSD. Policy changes cracking down on fake service dogs had emboldened her skepticism. She saw Jake, healthy-looking, articulate, as another scammer, gaming the system. What she didn't know was that Jake's Pentagon disability advocate had flagged his case for special monitoring after previous discrimination incidents. Amy's wedding invitation had arrived with a handwritten note. "Jake, I need you to give me away. Daddy would have wanted his war hero son to do the honors." The words had broken him, then rebuilt him. This trip represented more than family duty. It was proof he could participate in normal life again. His VA counselor had encouraged the challenge. "Ranger has given you tools. Trust them." The Pentagon advocate had been more direct. "Any discrimination against you will be met with full federal response. We're monitoring your case." Military precision guided Jake's preparation. Documentation organized in presentation folder, Ranger's gear packed and labeled, coping strategies rehearsed. His therapist had drilled him, "Know your rights. You're protected under multiple federal laws." The wedding timing was perfect. Morning flight, aisle seat, extra screening time allocated. Jake had practiced airport scenarios with Ranger, ensuring the dog could handle security procedures. Most importantly, he'd memorized the Pentagon advocate's direct number, the one reserved for discrimination emergencies. Initial screening went smoothly. Document checker thanked Jake for his service, directed him to priority lane. Standard procedure: present documentation, remove Ranger's vest for X-ray, maintain leash control, professional interaction, respectful handling. Then Coleman intervened. Hold on. Aggressive posture, problem-seeking eyes. Sir, I need to examine this situation. We've been having issues with fake service animals. Routine screening became adversarial encounter. Jake's shoulders tensed, familiar anxiety rising. But Coleman wasn't finished asserting her authority. Jake maintained composure despite rising heart rate. Ranger moved closer, detecting stress. Of course, ma'am. Comprehensive documentation here. Professional folder. Federal authentication. Clear presentation. Coleman examined papers with obvious skepticism. Look legitimate, but we see fakes constantly. What exactly is your disability requiring this animal? Federal privacy violation. Jake answered anyway. PTSD from military service. Ranger provides panic attack interruption and crowd navigation assistance. You look fine to me. Young people claim PTSD for free pet travel. Dismissive tone. Ignorant assumption. Ranger positioned protectively between Jake and growing crowd attention. Coleman's voice carried, other passengers staring, whispering. Military experienced TSA agent approached diplomatically. Ma'am, documentation appears complete. Dog shows professional training. Attempt at reasonable resolution. Coleman bristled at questioning. I'll determine adequate verification. Passenger sympathy building. Elderly woman commenting about respecting veterans. Business traveler mentioning disabled brother's service dog. Growing attention increased Jake's anxiety. Ranger performed subtle grounding, pressure against leg, focused eye contact. Airport Police Sergeant Maria Santos, Navy veteran, observed with growing concern. Professional recognition of both Jake's veteran status and Ranger's legitimate service behavior. But Coleman was escalating, not de-escalating. The confrontation was attracting exactly the attention Jake's PTSD made unbearable. Santos offered professional intervention. Sir, we can complete screening using standard service dog protocols. Reasonable solution, respectful accommodation, professional competence overriding Coleman's antagonism. Moment of hope. Jake began moving toward proper screening area, Ranger calm, focused, following commands perfectly. Other passengers resuming movement. Situation apparently resolved. Coleman wasn't finished. Actually, I'm not satisfied with documentation. Dog needs removal from secure area for additional verification. Sir, you can proceed, but animal stays here. Federal law violation, medical necessity denial, forced separation from primary coping mechanism. Jake's breathing became shallow, familiar panic symptoms mounting. Ma'am, federal law prohibits separating service dog teams except genuine emergencies. Voice controlled, but observers could see escalating distress. Ranger immediately responded to physiological changes, positioning for deep pressure therapy, maintaining alert watch. Professional behavior obvious to anyone familiar with genuine service animals. But Coleman interpreted response as performance, not medical intervention. Animal appears aggressive and overly attached. Security requires separation until fraud verification complete. Complete ignorance of service dog behavior, federal definitions, legitimate working animals. Santos intervened immediately. "Ma'am, that's a federal civil rights violation. Service dog teams cannot be separated." Military authority, legal knowledge, professional assessment. But Coleman had committed to her position. Pride, stubbornness, fundamental misunderstanding of authority limits. Jake stood at Chaos Center, feeling trapped between inappropriate compliance and protection of medical support system. The confrontation had attracted airport police, TSA supervisors, dozens of passengers recognizing potential civil rights violation. Jake's carefully managed PTSD symptoms were exploding into uncontrolled crisis. What Coleman did next would trigger the largest veteran discrimination investigation in TSA history. Coleman ordered physical separation. As security moved to remove Ranger, Jake's PTSD erupted. Full-scale panic attack. First severe episode since completing Ranger's program. Hyperventilation, vision tunneling. Crowded terminal became Afghan marketplace where his Marines died. Security radios became incoming mortars. Crowd became threats. Controlled symptoms exploded into uncontrolled flashbacks. Ranger broke from security hold, immediately performing emergency intervention. Deep pressure therapy, blocking stranger access, maintaining physical contact, textbook service animal behavior. "Animals out of control," Coleman shouted. "Remove it immediately." Jake collapsed against pillar, hyperventilating, unresponsive. Perfect storm she had created through ignorance and cruelty. Santos understood immediately. Veteran PTSD crisis, service dog providing medical assistance. "Clear area! Let animal work!" she commanded. Professional assessment, law enforcement authority, military experience. Coleman doubled down. Animals creating disturbance, remove regardless of passenger condition. Medical emergency denial, civil rights violation, criminal negligence in progress. Jake, trapped in flashback, focused only on Ranger's grounding presence while chaos erupted around him. Service dog continuing trained interventions despite security pressure, Santos made decision, bypassing normal channels. Radio call, airport command, federal civil rights violation in progress, veteran discrimination, medical emergency denial, need FBI Civil Rights Division, VA Inspector General, Pentagon disabled veterans, legal advocacy, immediate response. 18 minutes later, her supervisor received call from Pentagon that would shut down Terminal 4 and end Coleman's career. Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Martinez, Pentagon legal specialist, "We have federal civil rights violation, veteran discrimination, medical emergency creation. Shut down security checkpoint immediately pending investigation." At 10:47 a.m. Pacific, exactly 23 minutes after Coleman first mocked Jake's PTSD, Terminal 4 security was federally suspended while Pentagon legal teams descended on LAX. Federal response: swift, comprehensive, unprecedented. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez arrived with Pentagon specialists, FBI civil rights investigators, VA medical personnel. Coleman faced immediate suspension, potential criminal charges. Jake's episode gradually subsided with Ranger's continued intervention. VA crisis counselors provided support. Medical personnel monitored recovery. 2 hours of careful care reversing damage Coleman's ignorance had caused. By noon, LAX experienced unprecedented federal oversight. Pentagon documenting violations. FBI interviewing witnesses. TSA headquarters dispatching executives for National Incident Management. Coleman facing termination. Criminal charges for violating Americans with Disabilities Act. Discriminating against disabled veteran. creating medical emergency through accommodation denial. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's findings: Supervisor Coleman violated multiple federal laws protecting disabled veterans, systematic discrimination, endangering health and safety. Pentagon authority triggered immediate policy changes, criminal prosecution referral. Her military expertise and legal analysis carried weight civilian authorities couldn't match. Federal civil rights protection for all disabled veterans. Criminal consequences for discrimination. 3:30 p.m. Jake walked through LAX security, Ranger at side, escorted by Pentagon legal officers. Coleman's mocking had evolved into federal civil rights protection. Service dog she'd dismissed as fake, now honored at highest government levels. TSA agents stood respectfully. Passengers who'd witnessed discrimination applauded courage, professionalism. Martinez personally ensured appropriate Denver flight accommodation. Your service deserves respect and protection. What happened ensures other veterans won't face similar treatment. First emotional moment. Jake broke down crying at gate, not from PTSD, but from overwhelming gratitude that strangers had fought for his dignity. Second emotional moment. Ranger, sensing different emotional state, performed comfort behavior. Gentle head lean against Jake's chest. Working dog became family in that instant. Coleman, terminated, criminal charges, community service, TSA policy overhaul, mandatory veteran disability training, service animal recognition protocols, LAX, specialized screening for disabled veterans, Pentagon monitoring system for discrimination prevention. Thompson Protocol ensures disabled veterans receive appropriate federal facility accommodation nationwide. Congressional legislation strengthening PTSD service dog protections. Direct advocacy channels between airports and veteran organizations. Jake walked Amy down the aisle, Ranger at his side. Wedding guests understood they witnessed more than family celebration, triumph of human dignity over institutional ignorance. Experience beginning with discrimination became victory for all disabled veterans. Ranger had always been more than a dog. He was proof that heroes come in all forms, and that America's promise of dignity and respect must be defended, one encounter at a time.